Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I say,
Good.
are you in a hotel? Because I'm in a hotel. So
No. What hotel? Maybe we're in the same hotel.
I probably not. Yeah. um, I am a big fan of yours. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Of
I really dig this show. Everyone in it, first of all, I was just like, Kumail's great, Murray's great, Annalie Ashford, I'm in love with her.
Me
Um,
too.
and I don't know, there's something about I don't know if it's just the sexy location or what, but it's just sort of I don't know. I feel like I've had crush on Chippendales my entire life. I feel like I was like, ooh, the seedy underbelly of the calendars that I used to steal. Well, I stole one Chippendales calendar once when I was like
Oh
12.
my God, that's amazing. I love it. You don't
Probably,
still have it, do you? You probably sell it for like thousands of.
probably. It's probably in like my mother's storage somewhere. I
Right,
just
right.
yeah. Um, something I did want to ask first about. Sorry, I have so many things. I lost my place.
No, no, no. Go for it.
I guess big elephant in the room when it comes to Nick Noia and Steve Banerjee. There is uh, there's a level of respect there, but there's also they can't stand each other. I think that scene between the two of you and the snowball fight is a really great example of the push and pull between them, how they need each other, how they are so different from each other. And I just wanted to have you comment on that, just because it's obviously so essential to the show. And I think when he tells Nick at one point, he says, "You're a bully," and I think that kind of like made me really sad. Something about the look on your face. I wondered if maybe he was ever told that before in his life. So I guess I just wanted you to comment on that first. Long roundabout question, but yeah.
No, I love the question. It's interesting. I think maybe the look that you were seeing on my face is I think Nick was bullied. So I think he's
Mm,
and he turned into a bully. And I think that, not always. I mean, some bullies stay bullies, but I think some people who were bullied kind of fight to, think that they need to become a bully to be successful. So I think that
mm,
there's sort of a recognition of that. I don't think that Nick is or was super self-aware in a lot of ways, but I think there is some recognition in that. But also he's not. He's so in the kind of role of the bully, but doesn't see it as being a bully. He sees it as being incredibly ambitious. But I think there is a
mhm,
bit of sort of taking that in that moment. I think it's one of the things that makes their relationship so amazing and dynamic is that
mhm.
they're actually the perfect pairing. Like Nick
Yeah.
is incredibly creative, like just a creative dynamo, and and really made that show something else, like really
Mhm,
elevated it. And Steve, for all his, shenanigans and sort of dirty deals and stuff, was a really sharp businessman. So together, they had the potential to be, and at some point they were like incredibly successful together.
mhm,
But they were both also wanted to be top dog and incredibly ambitious, and also, there's a lot of yeah, wanting ownership. I think jealousy from Steve of Nick because he was such a sort of gregarious, sort of like great with the public, great sort of outward facing, sort of public persona, and Steve was not that.
mhm.
But I think it's sort of the tragedy of the show, or one of the tragedies of the show, is that these guys were kind of a perfect match,
Yeah.
um, but aspects of their personality, well, the same aspect of their personality, the sort of unbridled ambition, got in their way and just sort of took them both down, really.
It sort of when I was rewatching the episode last week, it was just I wanted, even though I knew what was going to happen, because it was the second time that I watched it, I was just like, can you both just chill the hell out for 2 seconds?
I know.
Just like, just listen to each other for 2 seconds, and you guys could take over the world. Like, just come on.
But that's what's compelling about a lot of stories, right?
Yeah.
I think this story is just watching this sort of car crash unfolds. You're like, what are you doing? And there's all these points along the way where if they just took a breath and
Mhm.
like, didn't do what they, their impulse is to do to kind of like fight back or, create sort of mayhem, it could have gone a completely different way. But it's that sort of fascinating thing of watching what happens when our impulses as humans are unchecked, and it just will spiral, like.
Hmm.
And so it's a cautionary tale in that way, I guess, and also
Yeah.
just sort of fascinating and funny and tragic to watch these people just like making all the choices that you're like, oh no, and watching them spiral because of it.
Yeah. I did want to ask about, I don't want to say Nick's manipulation, but I kept thinking about the scene where he's trying to pitch US mail. One of the gentlemen in that scene, Roland, he used to do theater at at a theater where I used to work in the box office. And
Oh, amazing.
it really freaked me out when I saw him on screen. That was really weird. So there's like, you have that scene when you're trying to pitch your Nick's own thing, and then it doesn't go as planned, and then he turns around and has that meeting with Steve later, and then I kept thinking about how when you are talking about bringing Chippendales all around the world, and you say talk about a homecoming, bring Chippendales to India, and I guess I want to know, like, how do you sort of walk a fine line of somebody who is very expertly trying to get what he wants from other people just because he's very good at it, and I guess he can just use his natural charisma to do it.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that I found so fascinating about playing him, and why, one of the reasons I wanted to play him is that, like, people are not, they're not black and white, and like like if you watch that like Nexium documentary or anything about a
Oh God,
comedy,
yeah. Mm.
like, not that I mean, there was moments where I'm like, you people wake up, but there was moments also where you're like, oh wow, this person is very persuasive, and what they're selling, there's an element of it that if you're, vulnerable or whatever, there's an element of appeal, of like self-development and whatever. And I think great manipulators, I mean, we're seeing them a lot in, politics and all sorts of sort of areas at this
No.
point, where there's an element of truth or an element of, like, that they use to really pull you in and connect, like that thing
Mhm.
that you're saying about what a homecoming with India. Like, he knows it's a
It's
whole,
like, oh God.
yeah. So it's very clever, but he's also like, also mixed in with it is this, he is very ambitious. It's all like, in a way, he justifies it to himself. It's all for a good reason. It is a great homecoming for Steve.
Hmm. Yeah.
It, you know,
Honestly, it would be.
so
It would be.
it's. I mean, he knows he's using it as a as a tool of manipulation, but he's mixed. He's that like sort of seductive mix of like great creativity and great ambition and like great manipulation, that you sometimes it's hard to pick it apart. Is it just,
Mm.
is this guy, bringing me on board this like great sort of like fast train to success, or is it all self-interest? And I think it is hard to pick it apart, and I think it probably would be hard at times. I mean, I think Nick was a very conscious manipulator. He knew what he was doing, but I think also he sort of gets himself into the mode where it's hard to completely pick it all apart. It's
Hmm.
all for a greater sort of purpose, and it does serve them both. Like they are.
Yeah.
Steve is going to make a ton of money, so yeah, I don't know. I think it's it's that interesting thing about that that I think is interesting for actors, where it's not like, and this guy is manipulative, so he's going to have like a ha 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 laugh, like he's like he's charismatic and he's seductive and he's manipulating, and it's, so it's all those things that are all mixed in that makes it a really sort of potent, interesting character, I think.
Well, I think you can also see the charisma in the scene where you're in the parking lot trying to get new dancers and teaching them the choreography. Maybe it's just because I mean, I have a theater background too, so I know what it's like to be like in that room to try to please somebody, but there's something about the way that you are talking to those guys to try to get them to do stuff that it sort of pulls you in a way, maybe consciously or subconsciously, that I was like, all right, you want to sort of be around that energy. So
Yeah, I mean, we've all, those of us who are, well, in any field, especially in theater for some reason, I feel like I remember directors who were kind of like, we saw them sort of like, they sort of became like gurus and they taught, there's one
Hmm.
director I'm thinking of particularly who she was so fantastic because she was incredibly inspiring and it was almost, we were doing this thing with a higher purpose and it almost did feel like a cult in a way.
Mm.
And they have that way of speaking to you and really connecting and really seeing the value in you and pushing you in a way that like it's for your own good, but then they can turn around and be like, all right, you're cut.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah.
but it is what, those people are incredibly charismatic and there's, and I love that about Nick, and it is, it's effective because it does get things out of people. It does bring the best
Hmm.
out of people. But also like it can be super cutthroat because he's got his eye on the prize. And if you don't make, he's going to inspire you and inspire you and inspire you. But if you don't reach his possibly unattainable level of whatever, like giving him what he wants, he will
Hmm.
cut you without a second thought. So it's,
Yeah.
it's that's the sort of the
Mhm.
cutthroat world of theater, I
A
guess.
theater. Yes, yes, yes. Um, Something that is so fascinating about the way that you play him too is, especially towards the beginning, there's a deep, deep loneliness, I think, that kind of radiates from him. Like that scene that is seemingly so simple where you're dancing with a scarf, or there is the scene where I think it's what the first time that Chippendales East is performing and you're so nervous in the back and you have the headphones on. There's like the loneliness and insecurity that's there. Can you sort of talk to me a little bit about that? Just because I think it's such a beautiful layer to the performance.
Thank you. Yeah. It was a beautiful layer in the writing as well,
Mhm.
Um, he is an incredibly ambitious, I think he was a creative genius, really. I don't know if you've seen his show Unicorn Tales, which it's a kids show and you can see it on YouTube, but it's like he made that on like $2.50, I think, and it is expansive and amazing. He's got people dancing in the streets of New York. I mean, the creativity in that man is like,
Mhm.
just phenomenal. Now I've forgotten your photo. What was the question?
Oh, I just wanted to have you comment on his loneliness. I feel like there's a
Yes, yeah.
I think like every like theater kid has like that sort of that needy, like sad undercurrent to something. But I think it's so interesting that that it we see it in these like alone, intimate, private moments when he's such a very electric, charismatic man.
Yeah, I mean, where I was leading with that thing of like what him being this sort of great creative mind
Hmm.
is that I think that is often the flip side. A lot of his energy goes into that,
Hmm.
and like a lot of artists who have like this incredible creative vision, like it's sort of that's their relationship kind of thing. However, I also think that there's something about being a bisexual, probably ultimately gay man in that era of how do you find, it was a challenge to find intimacy in the way that you wanted intimacy. Do you be open about it? How do you be open about it? If you want to be
Hmm.
ambitious, if you want to be super successful, is that a barrier? Often it seemed it was to be openly out. So I think there's that layer of it as well. I think there's a lot rolled into it. But I think a lot of it was being incredibly ambitious, creating this sort of persona of like a super successful guy, even when he wasn't successful, that took a lot of his energy.
Hmm.
And, until he meets the Andrew Reynolds character, which I think is a really beautiful part of the story, he doesn't really find that kind of, well, that's not true. He finds it with Denise as well. Like he
Yeah.
does find, but she's more of a like sort of part of the ambitious track. But it's, yeah, it's, I guess it's that dilemma of an artist of how much energy do you give to your personal slash private life, because there's this sort of drive to be successful quickly and to like to get this incredible creative vision out, and it feels like you have to be really committed. This is sort of like maybe old school idea now, that you have to sacrifice everything and you have to pour everything into it. And I think
Mhm.
he definitely subscribed to that old school kind of idea of success and ambition, that was his baby, that was his relationship, and that was his obsession. So everything else kind of fell away from that. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the stuff with Juliette Lewis. First of all, there's something about her that I've never been able to pinpoint it since I was like 11. I was like,
Right.
she's just so she's everything. And it's there's a line that you say to Andrew's character when he's sort of getting sick and tired of it. And I love that by that point, when you guys are together, that he is kissing Bradford outside in front of whoever can see it. But
Yeah.
then he says, when he's asking you about it, you say very simply, "We love each other," and I very much believe that. It's not put on. It's not. He's not just saying that to defend her or anything. I think that's a really sweet, also very beautiful thing about that relationship. Um,
Yeah, I mean, they are partners, really. I mean, I think that's the
yeah.
confusing thing for Denise. And I have had relationships like that with men and women that are,
Mhm.
from my perspective, platonic. Although this is when I'm much younger, and I knew that it was sort of, there was more to it for them, which is, it's unfair. It's something that you do, I think, when you're
Mm.
younger. And she, they have everything, Denise
Yeah.
and Nick. Like they're great. They're great partners, and the only
Yeah.
thing missing is that, like, they're incredibly intimate. The only thing missing is that sort of sexual part of it. And even that sort of bit of a gray area too. I'm sure they stepped over those lines, but
Yeah.
it is a beautiful relationship. And to her, I mean, she's just what you're saying about, you couldn't pinpoint what it is about her that makes her so incredible. Working with her as an actor is one of the most amazing things, because she's just this wild, wonderful
Yeah. She's thrilling to
energy
watch.
that,
You know.
yeah. And you've got to just go with it, oh, you
Hmm.
don't have to, I guess you could, but it's a wonderful thing to go with it, and it plants you in the moment. You have to just be completely spontaneous, and like, she's just, and inevitably with her, like, magic comes out of it, like, because it's so like connected and like right there. And it's thrilling to get on that ride with her as an actor.
Yeah.
It's so great.
That's awesome. Um, I guess one last question before I let you go. This may sound very cheesy, and forgive me if you've been asked about it a lot. There's just something about, ever since I've known who you were, you're one of the very few actors, like going all the way back to like Sex and the City. It
Yeah.
was like you've played a lot of queer people,
Yeah.
and that looking even going into like that amazing monster moment that you had with The Last of Us, which was so beautiful. And so I keep saying beautiful, sorry. But it's just, I don't know. I guess, like, I don't want to say, like, obviously are you conscious of it, because clearly you are, but it's just I guess, like, how do you sort of not take that for granted? Just because, like, when I was growing up, like, the only thing that we really had was like Will and Grace, and maybe some other things. People were coming out on like Dawson's Creek or some other shit like that. But it was ever since, anything that I see you in, something about it that is very thrilling for me is that you are just playing gay people. And I guess, just how do you sort of, I guess, yeah, not take that for granted?
Oh my God, it's so easy to not take it for granted. just be just because I feel, like like you, like I didn't grow up seeing a lot of queer characters in film and TV that either weren't kind of tragic, or um, that I could completely connect with. Like, it was very hard to sort of
Mhm.
find role models or stories that were inspiring, or sort of leaned into that kind of area of inspiration, or sort of role model. And not that I'm trying to be a role model, but it has been such a privilege for me to get to play queer characters and being able to try and bring authenticity and reality and universality to them in a way that I hope not only, queer people can connect with, but with a wider community can connect with. Because I feel like that's what's been missing in the past, where we've just had like queer stereotypes sort of perpetuating that idea of what, queer people can be, or sort of boxing us in some ways. And some of those stereotypes have, all of those stereotypes probably have been part of the path that we've been on to, like, get to where we're getting to, or where we are now. But yeah, I just, to be able to have the opportunity to be part of that sort of progression is just, so it feels like such a privilege to me, and I feel passionately about it. I mean, obviously as an actor I want to play a wide range of characters, and I'd be happy to also play straight characters, and I do.
Yeah.
But I have had a lot of, because I've, played queer characters come to me, and if they're great characters in a great story where I can bring authenticity to them, or I feel like there's something I can do to kind of push people's boundaries or create more kind of understanding or connection or just sort of authenticity to them, I just, yeah, feel really passionate about it. So especially something like, The Last of Us, that I feel like is a kind of queer love story that I think is very rare, that I haven't seen very much, and I just felt so privileged to be part of that. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing for me.
Yeah. Are you sick of strawberries yet? I feel like
Yeah, it's brought a whole new dimension to
all new. Yeah. There's something about like people always say, like, way back when there are queer characters in something, they're always like the mustache twirling villain, or there's that whole shade of representation
right.
for, like, 40 years ago, but now there's better representation where characters are allowed to be messy and stuff, that is even better because the writing's so good and the performances are so good.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, like to sort of walk that line between, breaking stereotypes, but also not making queer characters, like, I don't know, necessarily like two-dimensionally heroic, or
Yeah.
like, like, we're all complicated creatures, like, but being able to sort of, I think one of the things that, well, I know we're supposed to be talking about the Chippendales, but one of the things about The Last of Us is that it went out to an audience that was, a huge audience that was, not specifically a queer audience. And there's
Right.
something
Yeah.
great about being able to tell just a beautiful love story that happens to be between men to a wider audience, and to feel, a lot of that wider audience really sort of take it on board and be really moved by it. There's something so beautiful about that. But
Yeah.
also being able to
Cool.
play a character like Nick Noia, who's like a mess and has great qualities, but to, you know, but and his queerness or gayness is sort of incidental to who he is in the story and
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, it's great to be able to play a full spectrum of the characters that we see in our world.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Murray. Big fan. I know you're probably very busy, so I'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Joe. Great talking to you.
You too. Bye bye.